Hey guys, what's up? It's Savannah. Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another true crime episode here on my YouTube channel. As you can tell by the title of today's video, we are talking about the unsolved disappearance of a woman named Heather Teague. Heather was 23 years old when she went missing on August 26th of 1995 in Spotsville, Kentucky. So Heather was born on April 25th of 1972. She has brown hair and green eyes, and at the time of her disappearance, she stood at about 5'2". So we're just gonna jump right to August 26th, 1995, the day Heather went missing. So what makes Heather's case really unique and kind of unusual to a lot of the cases that we've seen in the past is because there's actually a man out there who claims to have seen Heather's abduction in its entirety. And this man's eyewitness statement is really what has been the center of this investigation. So this man who claimed to have seen Heather's abduction is a man named Timothy Walthall. So on August 26th, Heather was actually sunbathing at Newburgh Beach. Newburgh Beach is in Henderson County, Kentucky, and it actually is right on the Ohio River. So Heather was sunbathing on this beach and she was by herself that day. So Timothy actually claimed to have seen the entire abduction. According to Timothy, he said that he saw a man walk up to Heather, pick her up by her hair, and drag her into the woods right off of the Newburgh Beach at gunpoint. Shortly after Timothy saw this, he ended up calling 911 and explaining the incident to the 911 operator. Timothy described the man that took Heather into the woods as a white man standing at about 6 feet tall. Timothy described him as having brown hair and a brown bushy beard. Timothy estimated that the man who took Heather weighed anywhere from 210 to 230 pounds. And he also said that this man was wearing blue jeans but no t-shirt. So if you're wondering how Timothy was actually able to see the entire abduction go down, Timothy actually lived across the river. So he lived on the other side, and according to him, he was at home and he said he was about to sit down and have something to eat. But before sitting down and eating, Timothy said that he decided to take a quick scan of the beach with the telescope that he had in his house. He said once he looked into his telescope, he was able to see the man abducting Heather. Like, it's very coincidental if you think about it, for Timothy, who was across the river, to just end up looking into his telescope right at the moment that Heather was being abducted. When Timothy called 911, he said he waited about 20 to 25 minutes before picking up the phone and actually calling them, because he said he was waiting to see if Heather would come back for her belongings that were also on the beach. And after about 20 to 25 minutes passed and Heather still didn't return, that is when Timothy decided that he was going to call the police. So after Timothy called 911, the authorities immediately went to Newburgh Beach and they started their search. They brought in search dogs, they were scanning the entire beach, they were scanning the woods that Heather was reportedly dragged into. But despite all of the police's search, they were unable to find any sign of Heather anywhere. And that's all we have to go off of. That is literally the entire story that we have to go off of. And to this day, Heather has never been seen or heard from since. So let's talk about suspects, because there were a couple different suspects right off of the bat that were accused of being Heather's abductor. So there was a witness who came forward, and this witness said that in the Newburgh Beach parking lot, Heather's car was parked next to a red and white Ford Bronco. So when police did a little bit of digging, they were able to find that this car belonged to a man named Marvin Dill, and Marvin goes by the name Marty, so that's what we're going to refer to him as. And right after Heather's disappearance, Marty was actually pulled over by police after hearing this tip. And when police searched his car, police found multiple guns. They also found rope, knives, duct tape, rubber gloves, and a piece of hair in the back of Marty's car that looked like it could have belonged to Heather's because it was a brown piece of hair. So based off of that, based off of strictly that, you would kind of think, okay, this is a no-brainer, but it wasn't that simple. So Timothy, the man who claimed to have seen the entire abduction happen, had actually helped police come up with a composite sketch. And a lot of people believe that this composite sketch looks very, very similar to Marty. But Marty's family and friends have a problem with this composite sketch because Timothy said in the 911 call, he described the man that took Heather as having brown hair and a bushy brown beard. Now, the problem that Marty's friends and family have with this is that at the time of Heather's abduction, Marty was actually completely bald and clean shaven. So he had no beard, no hair, so it doesn't fit the description that Timothy described to the 911 operator. And to top it all off, when Marty found out that the police were actually coming to his house to question him on Heather's disappearance, he actually ended up committing suicide before the police were ever able to get to his house. So by the time that they got there, he was already dead. I don't know why they let him go after finding knives and guns and duct tape and rubber gloves and rope in the back of his car, and they just let him go after that, but that's just something we'll never have the answer for. So Heather's mom is a woman named Sara Teague, and Sara says that basically because of the way the investigation had played out, Sara was basically made out to believe that Marty was responsible for Heather's abduction. Sara said that from the beginning of Heather's disappearance, Marty was basically pinpointed by the police for Heather's disappearance. And so she really didn't have anything else to go off of. But remember, this was only within 5 days of the investigation happening. So within the 5 days of the investigation, not only has Heather gone missing and hasn't been seen, the one suspect that police are pinpointing has now committed suicide. And Sara says that in the beginning, she did believe that Marty was responsible for Heather's disappearance, but that was only because it was so early on in the investigation and police were just telling her, like, yeah, Marty is responsible for this. She said that at that point, she had no other reason to believe otherwise. After Heather's abduction, Sara, Heather's mom, really wanted to listen to the 911 call that was made in by Timothy to the police. She would continuously ask the police to hear that call, that she wanted to hear it, but time and time again, they never let her hear the phone call. And obviously this is extremely frustrating for Sara for many reasons. One, it's the phone call reporting her daughter missing, but two, 911 calls are public record. So she was very confused as to why she wasn't being able to hear what was being said the day that her daughter went missing. She didn't understand why police wouldn't just let her have that. So police finally did let Sara hear the 911 call made by Timothy, and they let her hear it in 2008. So they let Sara hear the 911 call 13 years after her disappearance. 13 years. Sara, as well as Sara's lawyer, were the only two people that were allowed to listen to this phone call, and the police let them listen to the phone call in 2008, and then they also let them listen to the phone call again in 2016. So you have 13 years between Heather's abduction and the first time Sara and her lawyer are able to listen to the 911 call, and then you have another time frame of 8 years that it takes for the police to allow Sara and her lawyer to hear the phone call for the second time. Now this is where it gets weird, because Sara is convinced, Sara and her lawyer are both convinced that the phone call that police showed them in 2008 is not the same phone call that they were shown in 2016. The police claim to this day that it's still the same 911 call. Sara claims that the differences in the calls are that the one in 2008 was very short and abrupt, and it only described the abductor's appearance. Then she says the one that she heard in 2016 said nothing about the appearance of the abductor. So it makes you wonder, did police like pull that part out for whatever reason, and why would they do that if so? And if Sara is right, then why are they showing her a different portion of the 911 call that they didn't show her in the beginning? However, since all of this, the 911 call has actually been released to the public, and I do recommend that you listen to it if you are interested. You can just go onto YouTube and search Timothy Walthall 911 phone call, and it's about 8.5 minutes. And basically, to summarize it, like I said, Timothy called 911 and told them that he was about to sit down and eat when he decided to take a quick scan of the beach through his telescope. He said that when he did his quick scan, he saw Heather laying face down on the beach sunbathing when a man approached her and grabbed her by the back of her head and lifted her up and carried her off into the woods at gunpoint. Timothy said that at the time that this happened, there was only one other group of people on the beach with Heather, and they were on the opposite side of the beach. So Heather was on the far left of the beach and the other people were on the far or right of the beach, or vice versa. So to this day, we really have no answer, no solid answer on what the deal is with the 911 phone call. Police, like I said, are very adamant that they showed Sara and her lawyer the same phone call. But like I said, Sara and her lawyer completely say otherwise. I don't know why Sara would have any reason to lie about that. Personally, I can't think of one reason. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, because I just think that's so weird. So then we have another suspect that comes into the picture, and this suspect's name is Christopher Bello. Now, Christopher actually lived in Henderson County, which is where the beach was that Heather was at the time of her disappearance. But weirdly enough, the same day that Marty committed suicide after he heard that the police were coming to talk to him, Christopher actually just fled Kentucky. He up and left the same day that Marty committed suicide. And another weird fact is that it has been stated that Heather, Christopher, and Marty all share similar acquaintances. So the reason that Christopher Bello is a suspect is because he confessed and pled guilty to attempted involuntary manslaughter of a woman named Catherine Fetzer in 1991. To this day, Catherine's body has never been found, and Christopher is also a possible possible suspect in 3 other women's disappearances. Those other 3 women are Mary Kushto, Shailene Farrell, and Christina Porso. I apologize if I am butchering any of those names. Even though Christopher is a suspect in all of those cases, he has adamantly denied having any involvement in Heather's disappearance. Investigators do believe that Christopher could have targeted women who did have similar features to Catherine. And when comparing Catherine and Heather, they both do have long dark hair and stand at about the same height and weight. So they do have similar features. Authorities also believe that they have circumstantial evidence that ties Christopher to the crime, but we all know that you can't make a case solely based off circumstantial evidence. It's very, very difficult. And because of Christopher's confession, he actually is serving time in prison right now, but he does get released fairly soon. Christopher has been in prison since 2003, and he is scheduled to be released in 2021. So that is just next year. So we've talked about the possibility and the theory of Marty Dill being responsible for Heather's disappearance. We've also talked about the possibility of Christopher Bello being responsible for Heather's disappearance, but there is another theory that I want to touch on. The other theory in this case is that Timothy Walthall, the man who called 911 to report Heather missing, is actually the one who was responsible for Heather's disappearance. The fact that he looked in his telescope at the exact time that Heather was being abducted, I almost just wonder if it's too good to be true. It's just a little hard to believe. It almost seems too perfect. Along with that, he waited 25 minutes before calling the police. And with the way he described the whole interaction, it wasn't like this man walked up to Heather and they both walked off arm in arm or everything seemed fine. He said that a man pointed a gun at Heather and dragged her off by her hair. So I don't think there's any mistake as to him maybe thinking that this was a miscommunication or that Heather was okay. At the same time, we can never really judge someone's reaction based off of what we think because we never know what we would do in that moment. I don't think this is like a state of confusion. Like, you know that she's in danger. It's not really a question if you saw what you're saying that you saw. Timothy Walthall was also very present in the investigation. Heather's mom, Sara, says that there were multiple occasions where she was called to the police station to talk to the police about the investigation, and Timothy would always just be there. I guess when I think of how this theory could have possibly panned out, my one hang-up is that he did live across the river. Timothy did take a boat after he did dial the 911 call to the beach to meet authorities there, to meet them and talk through the whole thing. It could have been that Timothy did look in his telescope, saw Heather, saw that Heather was alone, saw that there was really no one on the beach, saw an opportunity and took it. Even Heather's mom, Sara, has come out and said she has had a very hard time trusting Timothy. I haven't found anything that says that she thinks that he's the one responsible, but as far as believing his story, she says she does not believe it. In 2007, Sara actually declared Heather dead in order to meet the requirements needed to receive the FBI's investigation files on Heather's case. Sara said that the files that she received contained hundreds of pages of different reports as well as different leads. So that's what we have to go off of on this case, and it's frustrating. The fact that Heather went to Newburgh Beach and laid out to suntan and was never seen again. I don't know how big this beach is, but I just wonder if the other group of people that were there saw anything or if they heard anything. I'd be very interested to know what the acquaintances, the mutual acquaintances that Marty, Christopher, and Heather have with each other have to say about this. I did read some reports that said that Heather did oftentimes hang out with the wrong crowd, and because of that, she experimented with different types of drugs. And there was someone that said that they believed that this was a possible police setup or this was a possible drug deal gone bad. Again, we have no evidence that supports that theory, but I just want to give you guys everything that I can because I know that there's not a lot to give in this case as far as facts and evidence. All we have to go off of is an eyewitness statement. I do find it odd that Marty committed suicide when he found out that the police were coming to talk to him about Heather's case. It makes me wonder if Christopher and Marty were in on this together and they planned this together, carried it out together. I think that that's also a possibility. When it comes to Christopher Bello, it does make sense to me as to why he would deny any involvement in Heather's case, and that is because he gets out next year. If he was already on death row or received life in prison, I would sit here and I would be like, what's the point? You already have life in prison or you're already on death row. Like, why not just say, yeah, I was responsible for this one too. Give the family the closure they deserve. But because he's being released next year, it makes perfect sense to me as to why if he was responsible for this, he would deny it because he gets out next year. He doesn't want to extend his sentence any longer. The other theory in this is that the person responsible for this is none of the people that we talked about today. There's a possibility possibility that this person is a stranger who hasn't even been looked at yet. And I think that's important to think about too. We just never know. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'm really interested to hear you guys' theories on this one. Please let me know in the comments below what you think. And with that being said, you guys, that is going to be all for me today. Thank you so much for tuning in to another true crime episode. If you're new to my channel, hi, my name's Savannah. I make videos 3 days a week, Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday. You should subscribe and join the family. I love you guys so much. I'll be back in a couple days with a brand new video, and I'll see you then. Bye, guys.